At my old boss anniversary dinner, my former colleague gave a toast thanking them for raising an only professional child. His wife raised her glass. My mentor smiled. So I stood up and made an announcement that left everyone speechless. I arrived a few minutes early, because I always do. That's just how I'm wired. The place was called Westridge Vineyard, one of those high-end, nap-adjacent spots in Sonoma where even the parking lot smells like old money and French oak. My name is Daniel. I'm 41 years old. I live in Petaluma, California, and I've been an architect for almost 2 decades now. I used to work for Greg Mahoney, the man everyone was here to celebrate tonight, along with his wife, Martha. 40 years of marriage. 40 years of being the golden couple in both their family and the firm. I stood by the valet, holding a small but weighty envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. A thank you gift. A gesture of gratitude for the years of mentorship, even if that mentorship often meant watching someone else get all the credit. I told myself this dinner was about closure. About being the bigger person. About showing up. When I stepped into the main room, a hostess led me through a maze of low-lit tables, laughter, and clinking glasses. "Oh, Daniel," someone called. I turned. It was her. Hannah. She looked the same as always. Perfect. Effortless. Hair pulled back like a Vogue editorial, black jumpsuit hugging her frame like it had been tailored just for this night. She was already holding a glass of wine. "Daniel, it's so good to see you." Her voice was warm, rehearsed, like she had just stepped off a panel discussion about authenticity. "I was hoping you'd come." "I wouldn't miss it," I said. She leaned in for a kiss on the cheek, then held me at arm's length. "You look grounded, relaxed." I knew what that meant. "You look like someone who gave up." Before I could respond, she waved over a waiter. "Get Daniel something. The Pinot is fantastic." Then she turned back to a group of men in blazers and crisp jeans who were already laughing at something she said before I walked up. The hostess led me farther in, toward a long banquet table where name cards had been placed in dainty calligraphy. My seat was at the far end, right next to the hallway leading to the bathrooms and across from someone who looked barely out of undergrad. "Hey, I'm Chase," the kid said, chewing on a breadstick. "You with the firm too?" "I was," I said. "Nice to meet you, David." "Daniel," I corrected, but he'd already gone back to scrolling his phone. I sat down, placing the envelope carefully beside my plate, under my cloth napkin. It felt heavier now. Not physically, just heavier. Like it didn't belong to this table anymore. I looked up and saw Hannah clinking glasses with Greg, her laugh carrying across the table like music. She fit right in. She always had. And me? I was near the bathroom. Again. By the time the entrees arrived, I'd already faked half a dozen smiles and answered the same 3 questions. "Still working solo these days? Did you ever end up hiring staff? Wait, didn't you used to work with Hannah?" I took polite bites of my duck confit and waited for someone to ask something real. No one did. The conversation flowed like a stream Hannah had personally redirected. Everything circled back to her, her latest project in Palo Alto, her keynote at the National Urban Design Conference, her new profile in Architectural Digest. I nodded along, pretending it didn't sting. I tried to add something. Just once. "I actually won a bid recently, that eco-housing project in Davis. Modular builds, zero net energy." "Oh, that's cute," Martha said, dabbing the corner of her mouth with a cloth napkin. "Do you have full-time staff yet? Or is it still just you?" "Still just me," I said, forcing a smile. "By design, actually." "Oh," she replied, as if that was somehow less valid. Greg didn't even look up. A few minutes later, someone clinked a spoon against a wine glass and called for attention. Hannah stood, glass in one hand, other hand placed lightly on Greg's shoulder. "Hi, everyone. I'll make this short because I know the tiramisu is coming." She paused for the polite chuckle that inevitably followed. "But I just wanted to say a few words. Greg, Martha, you two have been everything." She looked down at them like they were royalty, like she'd been knighted by their influence. "You took me under your wing when I was fresh out of grad school. You taught me how to present with confidence, how to negotiate like a New Yorker, and how to design like it actually matters. You raised me professionally like an only child." She gave a small laugh. "And I'll always be grateful." Everyone clapped. Some even stood. I didn't. I sat perfectly still, wine glass untouched, throat tight. No mention of anyone else. Not the dozens of employees who'd helped build the firm. Not Alan. Not Petra. And definitely not me. I wasn't part of the narrative. Not in the slideshow, not in the speeches, not even in the whispered anecdotes about those early days. I'd trained Hannah. I'd pulled her through her first 2 botched design reviews. I'd covered for her when she froze during her first city planning board presentation. But tonight, I was wallpaper. I looked down the table. No one was looking back at me. Just forks rising and falling. Wine glasses clinking. A room full of people who didn't even realize I'd been erased. That was the moment it hit me. Not like a slap, more like a quiet truth settling in. I was never the protege, never the legacy. Just the guy who worked hard and stayed quiet while someone else got the spotlight. And somehow, I'd let it happen. I didn't plan it. I didn't rehearse it. It just happened. The second dessert plates hit the table and the buzz of conversation started to rise again. I stood up. No clinking glass. No cleared throat. Just me, quietly rising with the envelope in hand. People noticed. Heads turned. Conversations tapered off. Someone, maybe Chase, muttered, "What's going on?" I walked to the center of the room, right between the two long banquet tables. Hannah had just sat back down, still glowing from her toast, still riding the applause. Greg turned his head toward me, surprised. Martha froze, fork halfway to her mouth. I wasn't going to say anything, I started. Tonight wasn't about me. Still isn't. I held up the envelope, and the room went still. I brought this, I said, tapping it lightly. It's a financial gift. Something I've been setting aside for a while now, a thank you to those who shaped me. I looked toward Greg and Martha. They straightened in their chairs, expectant. Of course they assumed it was for them. Why wouldn't they? But I've been sitting here tonight, listening, watching. And I realized there's been a misunderstanding. I turned my head, slowly, toward the far end of the table, where Alan and Petra sat, half in shadow. They hadn't said much all night, just smiled, made space, and passed bread. I walked toward them. Petra's eyes widened. Alan blinked, confused. Neither reached for the envelope, but I placed it on the table in front of them, gently. "This is for you," I said. No speech, no grand gesture, just that. And then I walked back to my seat, sat down, folded my napkin in my lap. For a moment, no one moved. Forks hung midair. Chews were left unfinished. Hannah stared at me like she'd just seen a glitch in the simulation. Greg looked stunned, not angry yet, just disoriented. Martha's mouth twitched, but she said nothing. Alan reached forward, cautiously touching the envelope like it might be a mistake. Petra whispered something to him I couldn't hear. Her eyes darted to mine, searching for an explanation. I gave her a small nod. A single beat passed. Maybe two. Then the room exhaled, but it wasn't relief. It was discomfort. Something had shifted. I had broken the unspoken agreement. I'd interrupted the narrative. In front of everyone. Hannah leaned toward Greg, whispering something tight-lipped. He didn't reply. His face had gone blank, the way it used to look when I pitched ideas he didn't understand and didn't want to admit it. A man near the middle of the table chuckled nervously and said, "Well, that was unexpected," like he was trying to rescue the moment. No one laughed. I didn't touch my dessert. Didn't say another word. I just sat there, calm, steady, watching the air tighten around the table like plastic wrap. I hadn't come here to make a statement, but apparently I'd made one anyway. I don't know how long I sat there after handing over the envelope. 10 minutes? 20? I couldn't feel time anymore, only the strange, charged quiet that followed me like a ripple after a dropped stone. People whispered, stole glances, but no one said a word directly to me. That was fine. I didn't need their words. I had my own, even if they only lived in my head. I thought about how it all started. Greg hired me straight out of grad school. Back then, he was still doing site visits and scribbling sketches on napkins. He liked big ideas, just not mine. Said my focus on sustainable design was idealistic, a word he delivered with a chuckle like I was pitching dreams instead of blueprints. Green doesn't sell unless it's painted on a dollar, he told me once, looking over my early design for a low-cost eco-housing model. You're thinking like an artist. Clients want ROI, not compost bins. So I tweaked my designs. I cut costs, simplified ideas, learned how to bury the parts that made me proud under the parts that made him comfortable. Then Hannah arrived. Bright-eyed, talented, full of charm. She'd interned for 2 summers and came back for full-time with a portfolio full of sleek city models and talking points straight from TED Talks. Greg ate it up. So did Martha. I trained her, coached her through her first client meetings, spent hours fixing her renderings after she went home. When she got her first solo project, I was the one who stayed late to double-check the specs. The first time she got promoted ahead of me, Greg said it was because she brought in a fresh voice. When it happened again, he called her a once-in-a-generation presence. Once, after she was named in a design journal's Top 40 Under 40, I got a text from Martha. Just 5 words. "Nice trophy. Does it come with a raise?" I didn't reply. What was there to say? I wasn't bitter, not then. Just tired. I told myself that patience would pay off. That loyalty mattered. But loyalty, I learned, only goes one way if you're invisible. That's when Alan and Petra started showing up in my life in small, quiet ways. Alan would swing by my desk when he saw me staring blankly at a screen. "You need coffee, or just escape?" he'd ask. Petra would bring extra lunch, every Thursday like clockwork, after she found out I'd been skipping meals during proposal weeks. When I burned out during the big municipal project in Santa Rosa, the one Hannah presented, the one I drafted from start to finish, I missed 2 weeks of work. I didn't hear from Greg, or Martha, or even HR. But Alan brought over groceries. Petra made me soup. They stayed in the doorway the first night, not wanting to intrude, just being there. No lectures. No pity. Just real people who saw me. Later, after I left the firm, Alan helped me find my first solo client. Petra sat with me at a Goodwill as I picked out furniture for the rental house I moved into after my breakup. The breakup no one at the office even asked about. They never made it feel like a big thing. Just quiet support, again and again, until it filled the gaps other people left. And that's what that envelope was about. Not money. Not revenge. It was overdue recognition for the only people who never made me beg to be seen. Across the table now, Petra touched Alan's hand. Their fingers interlaced, barely moving. That silence, the one that came after I stood, wasn't just discomfort. It was the sound of a story being rewritten. Finally, the morning after the dinner, my phone started buzzing before I even made it to the kitchen. Voicemail from Martha. Daniel, I don't even know what to say. What you did was, well, I think it's safe to say everyone was shocked. We're trying to understand what you were feeling. But that wasn't the time. Please call me. Then a string of texts, all in quick succession. Hannah. That was wildly inappropriate. You embarrassed them. And yourself. Hannah, again. I hope Alan and Petra know what you dragged them into. Greg. Subject. We need to talk. Daniel, what happened last night wasn't just hurtful. It was deeply unprofessional. We had a celebration planned, and your actions turned it into something else. That money could have supported firm legacy planning initiatives. Let's discuss this before things get further misinterpreted. I set the phone down and made coffee. No rush. No reply. Just let it simmer. They thought this was reversible, that they could walk it back with the right combination of guilt and reason. But I was done negotiating my own dignity. Half an hour later, Petra called. I picked up on the second ring. Hey, she said, her voice careful. That envelope? You're really sure? I'm sure. A pause. Because Alan and I talked, and it just, look, we don't want to be part of some big protest. It's not protest, I said. It's gratitude. Another pause. This one warmer. We just weren't expecting it, she said quietly. It means a lot. But it also stirred things up. I know. We're getting the feeling you might catch more of that than we will. I already have, I said. Are you okay with that? I thought about it for a second. Not the PR spin Greg would be planning. Not the subtle digs Hannah had already begun delivering over text. Not the weird, fragile emails dressed up in business speak. I thought about the way it felt to walk over to Petra and Alan. To say, this is for you. To finally break the script. Yeah, I said. I'm okay with that. Petra sighed, not in exasperation, but in something closer to relief. Well, she said, we don't know what to do with it yet. But, thank you. You'll figure it out, I said. That's why I gave it to you. After we hung up, I checked my phone again. More texts. More damage control dressed up as concern. Martha, you're not yourself lately. I think Alan and Petra might be influencing your thinking. They always had their own issues with how things were run. Greg, if you're experiencing burnout, we have resources. Don't isolate yourself over a misunderstanding. Hannah, it was one dinner. You've made it into a whole thing. Please get some perspective. I actually laughed. Not because any of it was funny, but because they still didn't get it. They thought I'd had a bad day. A dramatic flare-up. Something that could be managed and moved on from. But this wasn't a breakdown. It was a correction. I poured my coffee, sat down at the kitchen table, and let the silence answer them all. It didn't stop. It escalated. By the end of the week, I started getting strange emails from former coworkers. Some polite, some not. Hey man, just wanted to give you a heads up, Greg's been talking. Heard you pulled something reckless at the Mahoney dinner. You okay? Is it true you're going through something? Hannah made it sound like you've been spiraling. Spiraling. That was the word they were using now. Greg and Martha were calling people, reaching out to past clients, firm friends, even minor people I'd only worked with once. Painting the picture carefully, Daniel was unstable. Daniel had always been sensitive. Daniel had fallen under Alan and Petra's influence, like I joined a damn cult. One morning, I opened my laptop to a direct message on LinkedIn from an old intern named Sophia. She was barely out of college when she rotated through the firm, nervous, thoughtful, smart. Sophia. Just wanted to say, I know what you did wasn't crazy. It was real. They're rewriting everything. Be careful. Below that, a screenshot. A group thread between a few junior associates I used to mentor. One of them had posted. Greg says Daniel's been acting erratic. That he's lashing out because of regret. Honestly, I always thought he was a little too intense. They were rewriting me in real time. And then came the email that turned my stomach. It was from Petra. Subject, we need to talk. Attached, email we received this morning. It was anonymous. No name. No greeting. Just a series of screenshots, old Slack messages, years ago, when I was in burnout mode, venting in private to Alan and Petra. Messages I thought were long gone. One read, Sometimes I think Petra's kindness is just too much. Like I'm drowning in help I never asked for. Another. Alan keeps trying to save me when maybe I just need space. I feel like a project instead of a person. Out of context. Raw. Ugly. Petra's message below the forward was simple. We're not mad, but we thought you should know. I drove straight to their place. I didn't text. Didn't call. Just showed up on their porch like someone out of breath from running, even though I hadn't moved that fast in weeks. Petra opened the door. Alan stood behind her, arms folded. Calm. Still. I'm so sorry, I said. I said things. Stupid things. I never meant them like. We know, Alan said, cutting gently. Petra stepped back to let me in. I followed, shoulders heavy. I was unraveling, I said. And instead of talking to anyone, I unloaded on the people who actually cared. You were tired, Petra said. Not cruel. I feel like I broke something. She shook her head. We'd rather hear the truth than live in a fantasy. Alan sat down on the couch, motioned for me to do the same. No drama. No lectures. Just quiet, level honesty. You're not perfect, he said. Neither are we. That's not the point. I nodded slowly, eyes burning. You showed up, Petra added. Even when you were scared. You stood up. That's what matters. I didn't say anything for a while. I couldn't. The Mahonies could launch their campaign. They could call it instability, defiance, bitterness, whatever helped them sleep at night. But this right here? This moment on a mismatched couch in a living room that smelled like herbal tea and dog fur? This was something stronger. Not spotless, but real. The letter took me 3 days to write. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted every word to stand on its own, without anger, without apology, without a single opening for misinterpretation. I mailed it in a plain white envelope. No drama. No registered delivery. Just a simple goodbye dressed in adult language. It started like this. Greg, I've thought a lot about what happened and what's happened over the years. I don't expect agreement. I don't need understanding. But I do need peace. I'm drawing a boundary now. This will be the last contact I make. Please do not reach out again, directly or through others. The gift you assumed was meant for you is never about money. It was a moment of clarity, when I waited far too long to have. I wish you well in retirement. Daniel. I didn't include a return address. A few days later, Petra called. Not about the letter, but about something else. You might want to come over, she said. We got something. It was a legal-looking envelope, thick paper, pre-printed header, Mahoney and Rowe Legacy Holdings. Inside, a letter, 3 pages long, signed by a lawyer representing Greg and Martha. It was polite in tone, but the message was clear. They were asking Petra and Alan to return the funds I'd given them, framing it as a misdirected contribution to a professional legacy initiative. Petra blinked. What? Alan just laughed. They really think this is a business asset? They're bluffing, I said. They don't have a claim. Alan nodded. We know. I already spoke with someone. Of course he had. I offered to take care of it, but he waved it off. You've done enough. The next day, Hannah posted a vague but unmistakable update on LinkedIn. In times of change, we're reminded that legacy isn't just what you build, it's who stays silent while others rewrite history. Loyalty is a quiet strength. Dozens of likes. Comments from people who had no idea what she was talking about. I didn't respond. Not even in my head. Let her subtweet the silence. That evening, I met Petra and Alan at their place. Snow had started falling early for Petaluma, but soft, almost cinematic. We cooked together. Nothing fancy. Pasta, garlic bread, store-bought cookies. Alan played one of his weird folk playlists. Petra poured hot cider into mismatched mugs. For the first time in a while, I didn't feel the need to fill the space with words. After dinner, we exchanged gifts. Handmade things, a carved wooden bookmark from Alan, a woven keychain Petra had picked up at a fair. I gave them a set of blueprints I'd drawn years ago for a tiny off-grid cabin. I'd found it rolled up in my garage and thought they might appreciate it. It's beautiful, Petra said, running her fingers over the pencil lines. Why'd you never build it? Maybe I was waiting to give it away, I said. Later, Petra pulled me aside while Alan was putting away dishes. We're not going to cash it, she said, gently touching the edge of the envelope still tucked in their bookshelf. The money. You will, I replied. We don't need a. It's not about need. It's about truth. You showed up. That's what matters. She didn't argue again. Outside, the snow continued falling. Light. Clean. Quiet. Not a new beginning. Not a triumphant ending. Just peace. And I realized, that's all I'd ever wanted. It's been a few months now. Long enough for people to stop whispering. Long enough for me to hear myself think again. I'm sitting in my home office, if you can call it that. It's quiet, minimal, a small desk by the window, a half-dead succulent I keep forgetting to water, and a second-hand chair that creaks when I lean back too far. I like it that way. I'm recording this because... I don't know. Maybe someone else needs to hear it. Maybe I need to hear it out loud. The video's not for social media, not for LinkedIn. Just a private file, a folder I titled Real Stuff that no one else will ever open. I stare into the camera, then press record. My name's Daniel. I begin, voice steady. I used to believe that if I worked hard, stayed respectful, and kept showing up, I'd eventually be seen. That someone would look up one day and say, hey, he mattered. I take a sip of coffee, now cold, and keep going. I thought standing by quietly was a virtue, that loyalty was currency. But I was wrong. Loyalty without acknowledgement isn't a virtue. It's slow erasure. I pause, glance out the window. A neighbor's dog barks at nothing. There's a voice in the back of my head that still wonders if I went too far. If standing up, in that room, with that envelope, if it was petty, dramatic, vindictive. I shake my head lightly. But then I remember how it felt in the moment. The silence. Not the awkward kind, the freeing kind. Like I was finally breathing with my whole lungs for the first time in years. The video wobbles a bit when I adjust the laptop. It doesn't matter. Here's the truth I've come to. I didn't burn a bridge. I lit a torch and found my own path. I let that sit in the air for a few seconds. Then I leaned forward, resting my arms on the desk. If you're watching this someday, whoever you are, maybe you've been there too. Waiting to be invited. Waiting to be acknowledged. Waiting to be allowed. I nod slowly, just once. Stop waiting. They saw you the whole time. They just didn't think you'd ever leave. I reach out, hover over the stop button, then glance back into the lens. You get to decide where your story ends. Not them. Click. The screen goes dark. I don't cry. I don't smile. I just sit there, feeling the weight of something lift off me without fanfare or applause. Outside, the snow's melting. And inside, for the first time in a long time, I'm okay with being alone because I'm not invisible anymore. Not to me.